There's a specific moment when good people go cold. Not broken, not bitter, just done. It happens quietly. One day you stop explaining yourself to people who never intended to understand. You stop giving energy to relationships that only take. And everyone around you calls it change. But Carl Jung knew what it really was. Awakening. The death of who you pretended to be, and the birth of who you've always been. Let me show you what's actually happening. If this resonates, subscribe. You're not alone in this awakening. Most people spend their entire lives in a psychological prison they don't even know they're in. The bars aren't made of steel. They're made of other people's expectations, family scripts, social obligations, the exhausting performance of being who everyone needs you to be. And then something shifts. Maybe it's gradual, maybe it's sudden. But one day you wake up and realize you've been carrying weight that was never yours to carry, playing roles that were never yours to play, accepting treatment that was never yours to tolerate. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming your authentic self. But what he understood that most people miss is this. Individuation doesn't happen through addition. It happens through subtraction. You don't become yourself by adding more. You become yourself by removing everything that isn't you. And that removal, that's what people call you going cold. They're wrong. You're not going cold. You're going sane. You're not becoming distant. You're becoming sovereign. You're not changing for the worse. You're changing into yourself. And that terrifies people who benefited from your unconsciousness. Because when you wake up, their game ends. Jung spent his entire career studying what prevents people from becoming whole. And he discovered something most psychologists still won't acknowledge. The biggest obstacles to your wholeness aren't strangers. They're not random difficulties or bad luck. The biggest obstacles to your authenticity are the people closest to you. Family, old friends, anyone invested in you staying exactly who you were. Because your awakening forces them to confront their sleep. I'm about to walk you through 4 patterns Jung identified. 4 behaviors that, if you continue tolerating them, will keep you trapped in a false self forever. And if you've been feeling guilty for pulling away from certain people, even family, this will finally help you understand why distance isn't cruelty. Sometimes distance is the most compassionate thing you can do for them and for yourself. Let's start with the most invisible one. Here's what most people don't understand about psychological manipulation. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive as obvious abuse. It arrives as concern, as love, as someone who just wants what's best for you. Jung called this projection, but it's deeper than that. When someone projects onto you, they're not just misunderstanding you. They're actively replacing your reality with theirs. They're telling you who you are, what you feel, why you do what you do. And they say it with such conviction, such certainty, that you start doubting your own experience. Think about how this shows up. You tell someone you need space, and they respond with, "You're just running away from your problems." You set a boundary, and they say, "You're being selfish." You express discomfort, and they tell you, "You're too sensitive." Each time they're not listening to your reality. They're overriding it with their interpretation. And here's the psychological trap. When someone insists on their version of you with enough confidence, your mind starts wondering if they're right. Maybe I am running away. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe they see something I can't see. That doubt? That's not wisdom. That's your reality being stolen. Jung worked with a woman who described this perfectly. She said, "I feel like I'm always defending myself against accusations. I never committed crimes for..." Her family would assign motivations to her actions, project feelings onto her she didn't have, interpret her choices through their fears, and then treat her according to their projection, not her truth. When she'd try to correct them, they'd get upset. "Why are you always so defensive?" But she wasn't being defensive. She was trying to hold on to her own reality against people who kept insisting she was someone she wasn't. Jung told her something that changed everything. The more you defend against false accusations, the more you unconsciously accept that they have the right to define you. Stop defending. Stop explaining. When someone tells you who you are and it doesn't match your lived experience, you don't owe them a debate. You owe yourself the dignity of knowing your own truth. This is the first pattern you must stop tolerating. When people insist on defining your reality for you, when they tell you what you feel, why you did something, who you really are, and their version contradicts your actual experience, that's not insight. That's invasion. Your reality belongs to you, not to anyone's interpretation of you. And when you stop defending, when you stop trying to make them see your truth, something powerful happens. You stop giving away your sovereignty. You stop negotiating your own experience. You simply become unmoved by projections that don't reflect who you are. That's not coldness, that's clarity. Here's what Jung understood about growth that most people never learn. When you start changing, when you start setting boundaries, when you start choosing yourself, the people around you won't celebrate. They'll revolt, not because they don't love you, but because your evolution destabilizes their system. Think of family dynamics like an unconscious contract. Everyone plays a role. The peacemaker, the scapegoat, the caretaker, the problem. These roles keep the system stable. Everyone knows their part. The script runs automatically. But when you wake up and refuse to play your assigned role anymore, the entire system feels threatened. Not consciously, unconsciously. Because if you can change, if you can step out of your role, then everyone else has to confront the fact that they're still playing theirs. Your freedom reveals their imprisonment. And rather than examining themselves, most people will try to pull you back into your old role through guilt, through withdrawal of affection, through making you the problem for changing. Jung documented this pattern repeatedly. He called it the family's resistance to individuation, the unconscious systemic opposition to any member becoming psychologically independent. One man Jung worked with described it like this. For 30 years, he was the family problem solver. Everyone called him with their crises. He dropped everything to help. He absorbed their anxiety, mediated their conflicts, sacrificed his own needs to maintain family peace. Then he went to therapy, started setting boundaries, started saying, "I can't take that on right now," started prioritizing his own life. His family turned on him. His mother stopped calling. His siblings accused him of thinking he was better than them. His father said therapy was making him selfish. They treated his growth like betrayal, like he'd violated some sacred family law. He told Jung, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I have become selfish." Jung's response was sharp. Selfishness is taking from others for yourself. Self-respect is refusing to give away what you need to survive. They're calling your self-respect selfish because it disrupts their comfort. That's not your problem to fix. Jung continued, your family isn't upset that you changed. They're upset that you stopped sacrificing yourself for their comfort. And they're calling that sacrifice love. But love doesn't require self-abandonment. Control does. This is the second pattern you must stop tolerating. When people punish you for growing, when they withdraw affection because you set boundaries, when they guilt you for evolving, that's not love responding to change. That's control responding to loss of power. Your evolution isn't evidence of a problem. Their resistance to your evolution is evidence of how much they needed you to stay small. And when you hold your ground, when you refuse to shrink back into your old role to ease their discomfort, something remarkable happens. Some relationships deepen. People who actually love the real you show up differently. Others fade. People who only loved your function, your role, your service, disappear. Both outcomes are necessary because you can't become whole while staying small enough for everyone's comfort. Boundaries are the most misunderstood concept in psychology. Most people think boundaries are about controlling other people's behavior, telling them what they can't do. But Jung understood boundaries differently. Boundaries aren't about them. They're about you. They're not demands you make of others. They're commitments you make to yourself. A boundary is simply this: when X happens, I will do Y. When you yell at me, I will leave the conversation. When you show up uninvited, I won't answer the door. When you violate my stated limit, I will reduce contact. Notice what's missing: any requirement that they change. You're not telling them what to do. You're telling yourself what you'll do when they cross your line. That's sovereignty. That's psychological integrity. And that's what most people, especially family, will refuse to respect. Because respecting your boundaries means acknowledging your autonomy, and many people, especially those who've had unlimited access to you, don't want to acknowledge your autonomy. They want continued access without limitations. So they'll test your boundaries, push against them, violate them, then act hurt that you enforce them, make you feel guilty for having needs that inconvenience them. Jung called this psychic invasion, the violation of your psychological sovereignty. And here's what makes boundary violations so damaging. It's not just that they disrespect your stated limit. It's what they're communicating beneath the action. Each boundary violation carries a message. Your needs don't matter. Your limits aren't real. My wants supersede your well-being. You don't actually get to control access to yourself. Think about how insidious this is. You tell someone, please don't call after 9 p.m. That's my wind down time. They call at 10. When you don't answer, they text, why aren't you picking up? Is everything okay? They've now made you responsible for their anxiety about a boundary they violated. You tell someone, I need a few days alone to process. They show up at your door. I was worried about you. I just wanted to make sure you're all right. They've now made their invasion seem like care. You tell someone, please don't comment on my body or my food choices. They say, you look like you've lost weight. Are you eating enough? Then when you express discomfort, I'm just concerned. I'm your family. I'm allowed to care. Each violation is wrapped in justification, concern, love, care. But beneath it is the same message. Your stated boundary doesn't supersede my desire to cross it. And every time you let it slide, every time you accept the violation, because enforcing consequences feels mean or harsh, you're training yourself that your needs don't matter, that others' wants override your limits, that you don't actually have the right to sovereignty over your own life. Jung was uncompromising about this. He said, boundaries without enforcement are wishes, not boundaries. And people will treat wishes as optional whenever they become inconvenient. This is the third pattern you must stop tolerating. Repeated boundary violations. When someone hears your boundary, understands your boundary, and chooses to violate it anyway, they're showing you who they are. Believe them and enforce consequences. Not to punish them, to protect yourself. Because you cannot become your authentic self in an environment where your psychological space is constantly invaded. You can't individuate when people refuse to acknowledge your right to separate existence. Your boundaries aren't negotiable, and anyone who treats them like suggestions doesn't respect your sovereignty. There's a specific kind of manipulation that's almost impossible to recognize when you're in it, because it doesn't look like manipulation. It looks like pain, vulnerability, genuine emotion. Jung called this emotional coercion, using feelings to override someone's autonomous will. Here's how it works. You make a decision for yourself, something clear, something boundaried, something aligned with your authentic needs. And the other person responds with such emotional devastation that you feel responsible for their pain. I guess I'll just be alone then. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me. You're going to regret this when I'm gone. If you really loved me, you wouldn't do this. These aren't expressions of feeling. They're strategic deployments of emotion designed to make you change your behavior. And here's the trap. Their emotion feels real. It probably is real. But real emotion can still be manipulative. Genuine pain can still be weaponized. Someone can truly feel hurt while simultaneously using that hurt to control your choices. The question isn't whether their emotion is authentic. The question is what that emotion is demanding of you. Real emotion says, I feel hurt. I'm sad. I'm disappointed. It asks to be witnessed. It expresses the internal experience. But it doesn't demand you change to make the feeling stop. Manipulative emotion says, I feel hurt. And it's your responsibility to fix it by doing what I want. It makes you responsible for managing their emotional state through compliance. That's coercion, even when it's dressed up as vulnerability. Jung worked with a man in his 40s who'd never made a major life decision without first considering his mother's emotional reaction. Job offers in other cities. That would devastate your mother. Relationships she didn't approve of. You're breaking her heart. Different holiday plans. She'll never recover from this. He'd structured his entire adult life around preventing her emotional distress. And he was miserable, completely disconnected from his own authentic desires, living a life designed to manage someone else's feelings. Jung told him, your mother has learned that emotional devastation controls your behavior, so she will continue to be devastated by your autonomous choices until you stop allowing her devastation to determine your decisions. The man resisted, but she really does feel that way. I'm genuinely hurting her. Jung was direct. Her feelings are valid, but making her feelings your responsibility to manage through compliance is not. She can feel devastated. That's her right. But you can still make decisions for your own life. That's your right. Her emotions don't negate your autonomy. This is the fourth pattern you must stop tolerating. When someone uses their emotions as leverage to change your behavior, when they make their feelings your responsibility to fix through compliance, that's manipulation, not vulnerability. Let them feel what they feel. Validate their emotion. But make your decisions based on your authentic self, not on managing their reactions. Because if you live your entire life trying to prevent other people's emotional discomfort, you'll reach the end having never lived your own life at all. You'll have lived as an emotional regulator for everyone else. If you're realizing you've been tolerating these patterns, subscribe. This work doesn't end here. So here's what's actually happening when good people go cold. They're not going cold. They're going clear. They're seeing the patterns they've been trapped in, the roles they've been playing, the treatment they've been accepting, and they're making a choice. Wholeness over performance, authenticity over approval, self-respect over comfort. Jung called this process individuation, the journey from who you were conditioned to be to who you actually are. And he was clear about one thing. You cannot individuate while tolerating behaviors that attack your authentic self. You cannot become whole while carrying projections that aren't yours. You cannot evolve while being punished for growth. You cannot establish sovereignty while boundaries are violated. You cannot live authentically while emotions are weaponized against your autonomy. These patterns don't just inconvenience you. They prevent you from becoming yourself. And when you finally stop tolerating them, when you finally set boundaries, enforce consequences, protect your psychological space, People will call it many things. Selfish, cold, changed, distant, ungrateful. Let them, because what they're really saying is this: you're no longer controllable. You're no longer performing. You're no longer sacrificing yourself for our comfort. And we don't know how to relate to the real you. That's their work to do, not yours. Your work is to protect the emerging authentic self, to create space for your true nature to unfold, to become who you've always been beneath the conditioning and the roles and the endless performance of being acceptable. Jung said something that every person in this awakening needs to hear. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Why is it terrifying? Because accepting yourself completely means releasing everyone else's version of who you should be. It means disappointing people, setting boundaries they'll call cruel, choosing yourself when everyone's used to you choosing them. But it's the only path to wholeness, the only way to become real. So if you're in this awakening, if you're pulling away from people who no longer feel safe, if you're setting boundaries that feel harsh but necessary, if you're choosing silence over explanation, distance over depletion, if you're being called cold by people who only liked you, warm and accommodating, let me tell you what's really happening. You're not broken. You're not damaged. You're not becoming the villain in someone else's story. You're waking up. You're becoming sovereign. You're refusing to tolerate patterns that prevent wholeness. And yes, that looks like going cold to people who benefited from your unconsciousness. But it's not cold. It's clarity. It's not distance. It's dignity. It's not change. It's return. Return to who you were before the world told you who to be. The people who love the real you will adjust. They'll respect your boundaries, honor your evolution, celebrate your authenticity. The people who only loved your function, your performance, your service will resist. Punish, withdraw, let them, because you're not here to stay small enough for everyone's comfort. You're here to become whole, and wholeness requires releasing everything that isn't you. Every projection, every boundary violation, every emotional manipulation, every punishment for growth. Release it all. And in that space, in that clear, boundaried, sovereign space, your authentic self will finally have room to emerge. That's not going cold. That's coming home, home to yourself. And there's nothing more important than that. To dive deeper into Jung's psychology and your own individuation process, check the next video on screen. And remember, choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's the only way to become whole. You deserve relationships where your reality is respected, your growth is honored, your boundaries are sacred, and your authentic self is treated as the precious thing it is. Don't settle for less, not from anyone, not even family. Your wholeness depends on it.